long-awaited goal. This channel had been mothballed because of COVID. And I basically was just waiting to revive it. And now that they've lowered limitations of live streams some time ago, now is the perfect time to do it. Now, I am not fully in character today, but I thought since this is an introductory live, then I would just not be in full character. Now, let me get a chat up, and the few people that will be here should file in. Because I want this to be a fairly intimate affair. In fact, this channel is intended on being... Richella, just a moment. Richella just knocked my book in the floor. The one I wrote. Alright, both of you off this shelf and off this shelf now. In fact, we're going to do this live without my children. As much as... Richella, you're out of here. You and Summer both, you're out of here. We're not... Homie's not playing that today. No, we're not playing kitty today. Sorry, my little friends. Yes, my little children have decided to destroy my house, so I have just ejected Summer and Richella. Little assholes. And that's really all. Hello, Leah. Hello, Rachel. Hello, little Linda. Hello, Pindar. Now, one thing I've not said, now see, I'm not linking this on my other channel, because I do want this to be a smaller affair, because those that want to are going to have some entertaining, interactive options. Now, I know all of the ancient gaming systems inside and out, and I'm fluent in them. And there is an extremely simple one to play. And I think we're going to give that a go. Not today, but since this is an introduction, I'm telling you about it. And I'll be looking for some players. Now, the game that we'll be playing is the original edition of Champions. Now, for those that don't know, Champions is a superhero role-playing game. And it only requires 3 6-sided dice. And I'm currently repainting these large ones to use as a part of this. Because I thought if I could hook up a camera in a spot to where everyone could see the dice roll, they really don't need to see me. So, that's one thing that I did today is I started repainting this set to make it very visible and pretty. Now, the interesting thing for those that do want to participate is you create your own superhero. Now, I can make anything because the champion system uses advantages and disadvantages. Your powers are your advantages, but to pay for these powers, you have to buy disadvantages, which makes the characters very distinct. And the old system is so perfect in its own way, I can do anyone's superpowers. In fact, if I wanted to waste half of my life doing character sheets, I could do the entire Marvel Universe. And this is where I go. We are going to create our own universe. You like every character that you make. Well, actually, Pindar, if you share, it's fine. I just didn't want Carlos and the Boyd here. And that type. Actually, you share, it's fine. But, I have to worry about these paths that it go down because I don't want Carlos spamming our game chat. This channel was always meant never to be a large channel. It was supposed to be a channel for the entertainment of a small crowd. For a bunch of, quote, friends to hang out at. And this was my original YouTube goal. And I never really got a chance to do it. And one of the things is that I knew that to do most of the content I wanted, it would require lives. So yes, is one of the things that we're going to do. Now, I do have original Dungeons and Dragons. And over time, once there's regular players, we can evolve into that also. But Champions is fast, simple, and easy. So once again, that makes it a wonderful format to start a group off with. Hello, Ronnie. So you kind of have to think about superpowers and a super name, and then on a live, while we're just sitting here and bullshitting, I'll write up all the character sheets, and I will do an explanation of what I'm doing with the character sheets. Now, in reality, when we're creating the characters, they're going to be kind of a monotonous live. You know, it's not going to be a live for entertainment. And, of course, I'll probably bill those as that on the label. And I'll talk to everyone else that is going to have characters. And like I say, we'll figure out your superpowers. Well, actually, Rachel, that's pretty simple. I mean, that's real easy. Now, as a bit of a flavor example, this is 40 years old. I've got to try to glue it back together, but I was digging through the stuff today, and this is a 40-year-old game supplement, Enemies 2. We may or may not use some of it. It's even been mouse-eaten, but it's got various supervillains in it. I'm trying to find something possibly iconic. And it's got drawings of them and all of their write-ups of their various superpowers. Now, once again, in my old life, half a lifetime ago, you know, I've had this since before I could drive. And I had a long-term game with superheroes and supervillains, and we had our own complete universe. And I'm not going to recreate that here. What we're going to do is we create your superhero. Then every superhero has to have their own nemesis. And then together we figure out what your superhero is. Then we'll come up with you with your very own nemesis. And because there will be multiple players, that will start off with multiple supervillains. So, you know, it will start as our own version of the MCU. We'll come up with a cutesy name later. But, you know, like I say, you know, I'm generally trying to keep troublemakers out here. But once again, if it's not in a Boyd place, that can get positive people here that want to game with us or hang out or just watch. Because there's going to be interesting stories and you know, really fun times. I had a cousin that ended up playing Star Frontiers. And I modified the game system because the characters sucked. So I changed the character system, rewrote it myself, and left the ship system. And he had a lot of laughs. And thinking about it, some of it, I almost told a story, but I realized, you know what? To tell that story, it would have to be an 18 plus. Now, once again, being all adults, sometimes our super world will have mature themes. But, you know, everything will be tried to be done into a tasteful way. And once again, I am going to flesh out this whole universe by the background characters. You know, if somebody wants to be a patriotic person, you know, there might be a government agency involved that does something. You know, much like the Captain America story. Now we know Rachel wants light powers. And in reality, Rachel, you and I could probably create your character in about 15 minutes on Instagram. Just saying. But you'll have to think of yourself a super name. Now, once again, after you're fluent in the system, say 6 to 8 months of playing, I'll let someone make a supervillain then. The game is originally not designed to play with supervillains. But, you know, I have played it for so many years, you can play as a supervillain, but it requires an experienced character, and you understand that most of the time you are not going to win because your goals always are going to exceed your means. So yes, we will all start with that, and I'm also going to, you know, we're going to have other things. But those are things that I intend on doing live over the next year. We're going to start with Champions, and we're going to work into D&D eventually. Original D&D. Not anything with modifications and changes. D&D as Gygax intended. Where you don't have mages, you have magic users. You don't have rogues, you have thieves. And you have assassins. And they cut them out of the other editions. But assassins are impressive. They at a higher level, you've got a chance of assassinating anything in one shot. Your first shot is called the assassination shot. And if you get that prepared shot, you can be a 10th level assassin and knock off that 10th level fighter, which is a lord, in the original one. That's where you start to get the hold and the keypad, is that 10th level fighter. You can knock off that guy in a 50-50 shot, one shot. And if you got something like a 5th or a 6th level fighter, he's dead man walking. And I had played an assassin before. Now, once again, because of the requirements of the assassin class, reasons why that they got it out of the game. Because you actually had to plan your assassination. I mean, it's pretty simple, and it was always a fun class. But it's an evil alignment only. Now, once again, the group I ran with, no one played good characters, so it really was never an alignment problem. Now, I will probably make you a few annoying supervillains. I mean, there's going to be times that you hate me. There's going to be times that you love the game more than anything, and there's going to be times that you're going to call me names. Maybe deservedly. But it's all going to be fun, I will guarantee that. So like I say, that's some of the things that we're going to have in the future, and I'm going to talk about my book world. Now, I'm unsure on what to do with my current content. Do I finish the content story as is, or do I reshoot it all? Because you see that book that Richella knocked off over there is volume 1. And I'm getting ready to start the final draft of it. And I'm going to write Grimgoth in it, although he's only going to be in a couple pages referred to, and he's going to be in the second book I've yet to write. Well, this is where we're going to now stop talking about gaming, and we're going to get into the stories that I currently had talked about. Estelvarta. Now, this once again with characters many times, you would like a simple overview. She is Elven Hitler. Yes. Now, once again, Elven Hitler had a different idea of perfection. She felt that the Elven race was corrupt. In her heart, see, once again, she started as an elf. She did start off as pure. But she felt that life should live off water and light. Once again, the elves did have to hunt, just like men had to. And they had so many negative traits that these lesser races had. She was very much an elitist because she was in the higher caste. She was a high elf. Now, once again, when she starts acting like a... Now, see, this is funny because this is where she started badgering her own kind. And, much like a Letitia Collins Servin, they got sick of it. And then they mocked her. And they ridiculed her. And she became a pariah amongst her own people until she finally left. And that's basically where my story with her picks up. Now, once again, this one elf's life changed the entire world. And the characters in my book live in this world that was affected by what was basically an elven genocide. perpetrated by my main character in my stories that I have told so far. As I said, Estovarta, she started off very, very good, but she got angry. And then in the ridicule, she got more angry. Then she became vengeful. And in that dark spot inside of her, she became corrupt. And then she left on her own. And her path led to one of the greatest tragedies that ever happened on what could be considered pre-Earth. Now, in my book is a character called Gorgoth the Grim. Now, his mother was a slave, an Amazon. Now, my Amazons were created because of the tragedy of Estovarta, because she met what you would term dragon men. I have a long name, and with my tooth and all that, I can't really, spurt it out. But, look at them as dragon men. They were young ones. Now, you see, I use many times in my book concepts from myth. And anyone that's in fantasy knows about worm's teeth. Supposedly, you plant them in the ground, and then warriors would come forth. Well, you know what I thought? I'm like, if you plant a dragon's tooth into the ground, and a warrior comes forth, wouldn't it look like a dragon person? I mean, this is how I've decided to do this in my world. Because, yes, I've decided that once again, using the old worm's teeth legend of planting the dragon's teeth and warriors springing out, this is how these beings are created. They are created when you plant the dragon's teeth in the ground, and then dragon warriors come back out. Yes, Pindar. And they also have breath weapons. And much like dragons, they can vary. And they can also vary in colors. That way, remember how they always say that, when you have to make merchandise 25% difference? Going in the modern world, I decided to work these kind of things into my book. Now, once again, the Elric and Melnibone dragons, they were different colors, but they all had flaming venom, where mine are going to have different types of breath. One of them is going to be more than a gas breath, but it will definitely be like a death cloud. And I called him Gothmog the Black, though I might change his name. Because Grimgoth was supposed to be named after a dragon. In fact, there's a whole big story behind it I had planned for the second book, but, that would be kind of getting too much ahead of myself. But Estovarta finds a group of these dragon men that recently sprung from the earth. And they were lost. They didn't know anything. They're a bunch of savage monsters. She tamed them. She educated them. She taught a couple of them high elf magic. And with that, she conquered much of the local neighborhood. Now, you see, when I started off in my book, Tolkien, matter of fact, my book is an homage to Tolkien in its own way. Tolkien had a concept. He said, I wrote on an exam paper, there once was a hobbit, and he lived in a hole. And then he said, who's this hobbit? And why did he live in this hole? So, starting off my world, I came up with something similar. There was a great forest. And that was my beginning premise of my book. There was a great forest. And Estovarta found these dragon men, and they carved a kingdom out of this great forest. Because once ago, in ancient times, there had been a kingdom there. There was ruins of it here and there. And they made their own little kingdom in between an eastern and a western vast empire. And once again, they guarded the road in between. That made them very rich. From all the trade going back and forth, across their road and the 10% tithe that they could get off that. Now, in the time of my books, and because of the actions of Estevarda, both of these empires are folded, and they're now just a collection of kingdoms. But at one time, when where I am on YouTube telling the stories, there is a great Eastern and a Western Empire. Now, by the time we get done with Estevarda, those things are going to ruin. Because when Estevarda finally disintegrated, that's the only way I'm going to put it to not give away the story. It caused a massive war with the super powerful kingdom that it created amongst itself. Because Estevarda was out to wipe out her own kind. And she was using orcs to do it. Now, one thing that they were doing was changing the orcs with the elven magic. To where they were changing the color of skin. To where there were orcs of every color of the rainbow. And the reason why they were doing this is the different dragon kings. You remember we started off with the dragon men. Well, eventually they evolved into dragon kings. And they created their own empire. And each king or queen was a different color. And so basically they marked their orcs. The purple dragon had the purple orcs. The red dragon had the red orcs. And that's how they operated. So that's why in my book universe, you have orcs of every color under the rainbow. Well, Pindar, it gets even better. There is an evil half-orc in my book. His name is One Ear. And he is some of my my anti-heroes' friends, but he's really working for the bad guys. So, you're going to get a lot of orc hating, in my books. But yes, and once again, when it ended up orc versus human, everything disintegrated. And once again, the trade between those two flourishing empires was cut off. And both of those empires were vitally dependent on the other. It's why there was never any conflict. They lived in a symbiotic relationship with a massive primordial forest in between them that only a sparse part of it was actually a kingdom in itself. The rest was a vast frontier that the elves were hunted like animals. And now, see, once again, Estevarda was an enchantress. She also made magical items. And being a vain, arrogant creature, she eventually made a magical item of great, great power. And as you know, these things tend to have a will of their own. And much like the ring, it was an adjutant to Estevarda. It didn't think, it didn't control her, but it did have such a magical aura to it. Remember how hateful she was? She put herself into this, but she also put her instability. Because you see, when you're a real magic user, you are putting yourself, you're putting a bit of your life force into that magical creation. Well, when she did that, also it fed her instability because she was putting herself in it. You can only get out of magic what you put into magic. So unfortunately, she ended up destroying herself. And eventually, the Dragon Kings had to fight her. And at that point, she had, well, I wouldn't say godlike power, but someone could arguably say demigod-like magic. Oh yes, Pindar, she is. Now, in my book over here, it'd be her granddaughter. Her granddaughter is one of the main characters. In fact, where I do tell everyone that I don't tell you who the main character is, her granddaughter is the main character. Although I throw you a dozen red herrings in the book to make you think that it's someone else. That way everyone in the beginning can pick their own character, and my book has a high mortality count. Just saying. Oh, Pendar, she was. She was completely. And her allies had to put her down. And it was one of the greatest tragedies of the world. As I said, it brought down 2 empires, and in some place that could have been a flourishing beacon of light was turned into a place of darkness. If she never had her genocidal urges to her own people, it would have been a flourishing kingdom. They would have hunted down the orcs, and it would have been literally an age of enlightenment. And this was a part of the story of Estovarta. Even though I've not got through it. It shows that if you let this fester in your heart, even your best wishes. Estovarta started off, she didn't think we should hunt and kill anything. Because elves still hunted and ate meat. They ate just as men do. They just tried to do it in the most responsible manner. With animal husbandry. But she thought that life to be pure needed to run off of light and water. Now, an interesting thing, a part that she did create a version of elven life that did live off of nothing but water and light. But in reality, they were nothing more than sentient flower people in elven guise. And they had flowers for hair. And I typically called them a florin. Because once again, she would have gave them some sort of pretty name. But in reality, they may have seemed like elves, but in reality, they were just plants with intelligence pretending to be elves. So, this is the basic outline of the character of Estovarta. And, of course, she ends up dead. Now, once again, in the book, it's kind of left in the open. Because I'm leaving the reader thinking that she could come back. Now, she is dead. But she can come back because a person of that wickedness goes to bad places. So, basically, you could consider her something like a demonic patron of evil plants. You know how in typical mythical worlds, every evil something will have a patron? In her next incarnation, she will be more of a demonic creature in the underworld that will be more of a demonic plant bitch. Because if I was ever to do a solo book of her granddaughter, that might be what I would do, is her facing her grandmother. Let's see, Pendar, it's much like an incarnation. She apothesized in death to what we would consider a demonic form. So, once again, all it would consider would be a true name and a summoning seal, a proper summoning seal. And as you know, that would be fairly easy to create from her name, her standard, her family's lines, crests. Yeah, that would be easy. If you gave me that and said if someone was a demon, create me a seal for it, I could do that. Knowing enough about the mystic arts as I do in real life. So there would be a way to actually summon her. Now, another thing, though, is her granddaughter, during the book, is becoming an enchantress. Because my book starts off with a very pissed off Gothvira. And that is my elf's name. It's not an elven name. Her mother gave her a name other than elf. So, where typically the elves have the big flowery name, my elf chick does not. It's Gothvira. It's something simple and something people can remember. And she has my sense of humor. The cheeky humor part that I do, that the character does that. You know, the kind of jokes that I drop in chat, I added that to her personality. So you will see that part of me reflect in that character one day. Now, my tragedy starts out with a different character. You know, our current tragedy in the book. Now, Tolkien said that he wanted to make an English tale because the Arthurian ones was too French. So I wanted to make an American tale. So I looked for things that were distinctly American. Bad guys being good guys. Zombies. You know, that is the only thing that we added was, creepy eat you undead. We added to the lexicon of horror and fantasy. So that it has to be an undead apocalypse. You know, I had no choice in my theme because there was only so much that America added. Now, America did add another thing called the Tall Tale. And that's represented by one of my characters called Gorgoth. Now, his partner is Mangrol. Now, another thing American is the odd couple. And Mangrol and Gorgoth are an odd couple. Now, Mangrol really is not sure exactly what he is. He seems to be a type of lizard man to you. In reality, he is a dinosaur. Just saying. He don't know it. You don't know it. The book don't know it. But, you know, us here, you know, because I'm writing, you know, Mangrol is actually descended as a dinosaur person. Yes, he is. And he was created by a lich to be the head of his armies. Now, why would you say that a lich would make a living being to be the head of his armies? Because if you get the holiest enough of priest over here, he can knock out your undead warlord just like that. You know, using his power channeled from his god. And that kind of ends your conquest real quick. You know, just saying. So, instead, he was going to create a cat's paw. And he created two of them. Because, you know, like an heir and a spare. And that way, if they both work out, they can command two armies. It didn't work out all right. They hated each other. Mangrol and Angus. And eventually Angus did run off during growing up. Because he slit Mangrol's throat and threw him down a well. And then Angus ran off and no one saw him again for quite some time. So once again, this would be Mangrol's nemesis. So Mangrol may be a lizard type person, but he does not talk with the hisses and the S. He growls because he had a big slash from across his throat here. So, you know, rather than being your hissy lizard person, every guttural voice he has, or say, his voice is always guttural and nothing more than a growl. Yes, you know, he is typically a leader type. A sorcerer of great power that wanted to extend his life and power. And Mangrol was made to be his general. And he was trained by an orc assassin that the Lich had hired. And eventually he was given some extra equipment. And after Mangrol killed his teacher, he took what he could and he said, "Fuck you, Lich." And he left. Because, once again, growing up with absolutely nothing but an evil undead bastard as your father, he was a narcissistic psychopath. So yes, you know, my dinosaur man is a narcissistic psychopath. So once again, he said, "Fuck you. I'm out of here, Dad." And he didn't tell Dad that. He basically left that in a note. And he got the hell out of there. And he went on the run. Now, once again, you know, his father would like to annihilate him, and he would like to annihilate Angus. Now, once again, when there's an undead apocalypse, and Mangrol's figuring out that that's probably Dad, Mangrol knows that he's going to want to kill me more than anything. So knowing that and being a narcissistic psychopath, Mangrol feels a need to get everyone to band together to save the world. Because once again, if the world does not defeat this, Mangrol's going to be a handbag. Just saying. So yes, so you kind of get that. Now, where I talked about the odd couple, Mangrol and Gorgoth. Gorgoth was a Viking. He was an Aesir. But he also was a bastard son in his own way. His father was high-ranked, and his mother was an Amazonian slave. Well, you remember when I told you the Dragon Kingdom fell? When the cities fell, they sent the women north. And the men stayed in a last-line defense, and they fought to the last man and held the orcs in check. And every single man in the Dragon Kingdom was killed defending the women escaping. The women escaped into the great forest in the north, and they created the Amazonian tribes. Now, Gorgoth's mother was one of these Amazonian tribeswomen that was captured by the Aesir, because the great forest did go fairly north, and that's where everyone was drove. So, we have kind of wintry Amazons at times. Well, they're still there. It's just, well, we'll get into that a little bit later. But, we're talking about Gorgoth here. Now, Gorgoth, he actually was the son of a very important Aesir warrior. But he had dark hair. He showed so much like of his mother, he could never be acknowledged. Now, there was the temple of Odin and of the sacred axe. Now, I'm going to talk about how they're an odd couple and then go back into this axe. Now, Gorgoth is a winter person. Mangrol grew up in a vast swamp. He grew up in tropical. So, my two characters that have to be with each other all the time, one, it's constantly too hot. And for the other, it's constantly too cold. And with them, everyone looks at them as the hard-ass bastards, and they could never imagine what they would talk about, but typically, one is griping about it being too hot or too cold. Just saying. Like I say, they are the odd couple. Now, this axe that we talk about, this ties into Ragnarok and Odin, because I know mythology inside and out. Now, in mythology, there is supposed to be a 3-year winter before Ragnarok. Now, nowhere in mythology does it tell you how this winter happened. There was just supposed to be a 3-year winter and then Ragnarok. Because I was looking for, something to use as a foil for my book, but there was nothing. So I created the Axe of Winters. And it is an artifact, and it was guarded at this temple. Well, behind Gorgoth is Odin. Well, Odin, of course, is worried. All the enemies have to do is kill his elite warriors on Earth, and they could get the Axe of Winters. Now, Odin as a god wasn't concerned about good or evil. He was concerned about putting off Ragnarok as long as possible. So, he had one of the Valkyrie start talking through the axe to Gorgoth. Now, Gorgoth wasn't allowed to be with the axe. He was just a door guard. Once again, he was lower class. He would not get that prestigious position. But, for a warm body at one of the lesser doors, that was his job. But every time that he got anywhere near the axe, a beautiful female voice would tell, "Take me. I'm yours." And much like a siren, it eventually drove him to murdering everyone in there. All of the great warriors. Now, you're wondering, how did this one warrior, who wasn't the greatest of warriors, murder all of these great warriors? Well, it's because Odin decided to give him gifts. Now, once again, Thor also had a belt of strength that was equal to his regular strength. So Odin took the strength of Thor and gave it to Gorgoth and made Thor use his belt. Once again, you remember, Odin wasn't always the kindest to Thor. So yes, my character, Gorgoth, he has the strength of Thor. Now, once more, there's Uller, and he is a god of the hunt. And he has Uller's boots. And Uller's boots give him the ability to, he could probably jump 20 acres if he wanted to. So it gives him incredible bounding and balance abilities. Hello, Rachel. Thank you, Olive. But this is the story, because Odin wanted that axe gone. He wants his enemies not to be able to find it. And once Gorgoth took the axe and buggered off, every knight in the north is looking for his blood. And, of course, on the other side, we have Mangrol, that there is one of the most, if not the most powerful magical entity on the planet, wants you a handbag. Or less. Just saying. Maybe a change purse, all that's left. That would probably be it, thinking about it. With knowing my character, he only wants there to be enough for a little tiny coin purse for Mangrol. Just saying. So that is the basis of their friendship. They are two villainous people that are stuck together because there are massive powers that want to murder them. Well, yes, Pindar. And this is where I get my tall tales from. Because, with the strength of Thor, Gorgoth can flip a dragon. He's got the strength of the strongest god. I mean, that gives you an extra line of whip ass. Now, Mangrol, through magical enhancements, he has the strength of a giant. So, Mangrol could lift a dump truck. Now, once again, Gorgoth could laugh at Mangrol lifting that dump truck. And, he could lift a semi and, press them in each arm in a completely unrealistic fashion. Now, Pindar, think about this. Mangrol is an assassin, and he has the strength of a giant. Now, Mangrol also was gifted by his former father with what we would call a vorpal blade, a blade that will cut through anything. So on one hand, you've got a sneaky assassin that has a blade that can cut through anything and the strength of a giant, and then you have another one, a barbarian, with an artifact axe and the strength of Odin's son. Now, unfortunately for the dragons of that universe, they became dragon hunters because it was an easy kill for them. The dragons would see two people, ha ha ha, you're dead. And then really quick, the dragon learned that I'm in a lot of trouble, and then real quick they ended up dead. And then they had the entire dragon horde. So in reality, by the time of my book, Mangrol and Gorgoth are wealthy beyond understanding. But neither of them could ever spend it or enjoy it, because as you know, they both have to live a life on the run or they're going to be killed. So it's an interesting juxtaposition. Throughout their criminal exploits, they've got more wealth than a king could ever imagine, and no way to make an empire with it, or to really enjoy it over much other than what a normal adventurer could get at a tavern. Well, yes, Pindar. Now, in the original D&D, an assassin gets all thief skills starting at 3rd level, and then they are 2 levels under. So a 12th level assassin has the skills of a 10th level thief in original D&D to give you basically a game comparison. And the other thing too is, being a reptile man, he does not have the footfalls of a human. Now imagine being a dragon. it kind of actually would sound a lot like the footfalls of a dragon man. You know, if a dragon was to hear Mangrol's footfalls, you know, it would sound like something that would be a friendly to him. Because typically, you know, the dragon men from the Worm's Teeth are typically guardians of dragon areas and dragon lairs. Now, see, the thing is, now the interesting Pindar. Now picture this. These guys have went on for about 50 years, killing dragon after dragon after dragon. Now, my evil guy has been going behind them and raising all of those dragons from the dead. So, my horde that starts out has an army of undead dragons at its disposal. And every single one of those dragons want my two characters more than anything. Now, see, remember how I tell you I bait and switch who the main character is? You know, this point early, I make you think it's Mangrol and Gorgoth. Because I have set it up to where all of the dragons that they ever killed are coming back to get them. So yes, just imagine that. Imagine about 100 to a 200, I'm not sure what I'll make it. You know, I'll try to think, you know, a little logically and plan out maybe how long it would take. You know, but it will come to basically a horde of dragons, and they've killed virtually every one of them. And, you know, I mean, that makes you public enemy number one. So that's an interesting with my characters. It's both of them do have superpowers, you might say, but once again, when there's an army of undead dragons that want to kill you more than anything in existence, you might have a problem. So this is another reason why my bad guys are determined to save the world. You know, once again, I had to give a realistic motivation. And I did that with the dragons. Because, I mean, one dragon's bad. You know, they were fighting like one dragon at a time. And now all of a sudden you got to maybe fight a dozen. And they don't have vital organs anymore. I mean, that's a problem. Because, you know, that's how you usually kill a dragon. You hit it through a vital something. Now, unfortunately, an undead dragon doesn't have a vital something. It just has mean, magic, and rip you apart kind of stuff. And that's some of their issue. Now, an interesting thing in my book, I do a little bit of a Harry Potter homage in my own way. Now, we start off with a wizard named Magnus, and he used to do adventures with Mangrol and Gorgoth, because Mangrol and Gorgoth are powerful enough that they can get through about anything. But now and then you run across a magical trap or something that requires a wizard. Well, that's what Magnus was. Now you see, Gorgoth, he may seem to be young in the book, but he's still about 70 or 80 years old. Now, in my book, Odin watches out for him. Odin also makes sure that he stays young by using the golden apples. And Odin always was supposed to wander the world in disguise. Well, now and then he will take apples to an old lady, give her a few pieces of gold, and ask her to make a pie. And says, there will be a large barbarian warrior come by, and you must give them this pie. And that's how, actually, my character Gorgoth stays young. Because in reality, at my book time, you know, he may look like he's 25, but he's really 70-some years old. Now, of course, he thinks it's nothing more than the axe. So, you know, this is the world that they grow in. Now, once again, when, I got to turn on this fan a bit, when everything goes bad, Mangrol and Gorgoth go around and collect all of the people that they ever worked with that aren't dead. Now, I introduced Mangrol and Gorgoth where they're killing their compatriots for the loot. Now, these guys are evil. And even though they have all the loot in the world, they would kill their compatriots many days for the loot. So an interesting juxtaposition in my book is they just kill the group that they're with. And then he finds out real soon, I need a group. So then he goes and looks up every A-list bad guy he can. And unfortunately for him, one of them is working for the other side. So once again, that causes him another problem. So once again, where, I'm trying to remember which author it is, but one author that was famous said, for this type of tale, you need several characters, and one of them can't be trusted. Well, I did it differently. I have 12 characters, and only one of them can be trusted. Everyone else has their own agenda. You know, if you read between the lines, most of the time you can find it. But yes, Pindar, because that's a part of it. And now and then there might be a raven sitting around, and that's one of Odin's ravens looking in, because, you know, Odin's idea is the axe will be a harder target for someone to get if it's out in the world. Also, if someone's wielding it. And this is also where Odin manipulated Mangrol and Gorgoth coming together, because Odin is interested in a protective system for an artifact that could destroy the world. You know, that's Odin's worry. So to him, Odin doesn't worry that what evil Mangrol and Gorgoth does. Now, he's not interested in Mangrol and Gorgoth, though. You know, if the axe was lost forever, Odin would consider that a win, too. So, you know, someone might consider that they've got Odin watching over them if they knew, but in reality, like I said, Odin's only interested in the axe never being found. You know, if Gorgoth was to die in a place where the axe would never be found, I mean, Odin would be tickled pink. So, you know, that is my two characters there. But where we go back to Magan, he was training his replacement. And Mangrol and Gorgoth was going to pick their replacement up. And his name is Jordan. You know, a fresh off the assembly line wizard. Now, he had his whole class. You know, I forgot, maybe like 7 or 8 of them. You know, they all graduated. Now, Magan has asked Mangrol and Gorgoth to escort the rest of these individuals along the way as they go on their next adventure. And they've agreed to do it. And one of them is a princess. Which is, how did I do the name? Oh yes, Amberly Amber. Now, if you're wondering how she got her name, I grew up near a place called Amberley Village. It was the next place over. And that's where I took the name from. You know, Amberley. So yes, you know, it is a princess named Amberly Amber. And she learned cryo magic. Now, see, the thing is she is a tropical princess. So once again, someone that can make cold in a tropical environment, I mean, that's gold, literally. And they're escorting her. That's the big person they're escorting. And there's a few other minor people. Now, there's Venetia. She's a baroness daughter, and if you ask, she is the most important creature in existence. She is another narcissist. She's not a psychopath, though. She's just a narcissist in the extreme. And her and Gorgoth hate each other. I mean, absolutely, positively hate each other. And at some point, there is a love spell cast on the two of them. Once Gorgoth's ex-girlfriend got pissed off and cast a love spell on the both of them. And it's one of those ever-increasing ones. And at the time I am in my book, it's at the sickening love part. Now, by the time I get to the second book, you know, they're going to be at the going at each other with knives part. Now, Venetia is an illusionist. Yes. So once again, even though Gorgoth has all these great powers, she can make somebody see whatever she wants them to see. So, that, like I say, that's going to be an interesting matchup in my second book when it finally all explodes between the two of them and they try to murder each other. Gorgoth has the axe. And he's Mangrol's partner. So that's who you're looking for with that. Now, once again, they have their whole cast of friends, and I'm not going to get into the whole wizardly cast because those are the main people. Because really, Venetia is not really a main person. It's just, she's kind of a foil for Gorgoth. He is the ultimate barbarian, and she is the ultimate civilized. And they hate each other. And then they're forced to love each other. And then because of the spell, they're forced to love each other until they hate each other. So where you see they come full circle. So, that's an interesting aspect about my book. Now, another interesting aspect about my book, the main villain just sits in the background. He doesn't seem to act. Now, what he has done is he has pretended that he's feeble and losing his magic. And a local queen, he taught her necromancy. And she had her entire population slaughtered by the lizard people. She had the guards open the doors. They just did what the queen said. But instead of friendlies coming in, it was an army of reptilian men that murdered everyone in her entire city. She had her own city-state. And then afterwards, she raised them all as undead. And this is where my undead horde starts at. Now, my villain, Maliki, he sits in the back and pretends he's feeble. And he sends his new queen out with the undead army to face the world and to die. Because, you see, when there was the Dragon Kingdom fell, the great magic users went off into a corner of the world and made their own little kingdom. A kingdom ran by wizards. A kingdom with flourishing magic. And it became the learning center of the world. Now, once again, Maliki used to be a part of this. Now, of course, he was too extreme. And they didn't like the idea of necromancy. And they told him to get the hell out. And so, once again, this queen had applied to the academy there and was rejected. Once again, she was a queen from a swamp-ass city-state. She was considered undesirable. Now, where I talk about the other princess that was trained, her family were merchants. Their entire kingdom was nothing but merchants. And with that comes money. And we know wizards like money. So this is also a part of the villainous female's motivation. Revenge. She's gained that power. And once again, my main villain, Maliki, in this first book, I'm not going to go out there and fight that entire kingdom of wizards. So this is what he does. He sends her out to run over city after city after city, country after country, running straight towards the magical kingdom. Because, of course, his plan is for everyone to kill each other. Because, of course, he has a second army that he's leading with his real disciples. And he's just waiting to come out in book 2. But in book 1, my villain uses a woman as a cat's paw. Well, she already is a lich in the book. But I do talk about her, some of the woman she was before. Well, my therapist, like I say, normally I'm critical of what I write. This is as good as anything that's ever been written. And I have 2 more parts I got to do. And now, where Grimgoth comes from is from a dark elf character in the book, Alexavra. She is a female dark elf, and where Magan is not allowed to train Gothvira because the council said, "Oh, you want to train Elvin Hitler's granddaughter? We'll cut your damn head off." So the book actually starts with Gothvira and Magan arguing. "You promised you would train me. I'm sorry, I can't." You know, this is the basic dynamic. So his solution, I will send her to my greatest disciple that can get away with it, which was Alexavra, a dark elf. Now, Alexavra is Grimgoth's wife. You see, this is prehistory. So in reality, Grimgoth is older than the dinosaurs, because I have placed my universe in like a Hyperborean age in the past, before the dinosaurs. In fact, Mangrol is probably one of the first dinosaur creatures that there are. That's why no one quite can figure out what he is, because back then, before dinosaurs, there was plenty of reptiles, but he looks a lot like them, but he's not quite them. So, you know, in reality, my Lich inadvertently created the dinosaurs. Now, once again, who knows? Dinosaurs could have been magical creation of wizards. Just saying. Now, I'm not making any... Once again, certain things in my book, I will leave an eternal mystery. And that's one of them. It's just a cute thing for me to throw out to think, well, maybe ancient wizards made the dinosaurs. Well, Pindar, see, this is the interesting thing. Remember Venetia I told you about? She has a love interest. And he loves her. Mandrid Moore. And I think I made him the pyromancer. And he is from a fairly well-to-do family from a Eastern kingdom. He would be considered Middle Eastern to us. You know, from but what we consider a sand culture. And very respectable. You know, where we talked about the two empires fell apart, what we would consider the sand culture is the most civilized place on my two continents. You know, in the modern time. And there's the competition because after the love spell, Mandrid Moore is... Remember I said that one of Mangrol's friends turns against him? Well, that friend uses Mandrid Moore. Now, there is kind of, in a way, Mangrol and himself, but this is made to be 3 volumes. Now, once again, I have set this first volume up to be the Queen of the Dead. You know, when we talk about working titles. Now, the second book is slated to be called The Princes of the Dead. Because in the book, there is a Vampire Legion, and there's also a Spectre Legion. And these are the undead princes of Maliki. And they are supposed to be set up as the villains for the second book. Now, excuse me, once again, because I bait and switch, Mangrol is the villain in the second book. You know, the person that you might arguably think is heroic in this one, or maybe even does the most to save the day, he's the bad guy in the second one. Now, he's also setting up one of his friends, an assassin. Yes, Maliki. Now, Maliki is insane. He is a psychopath beyond belief, and he's also a homicidal maniac. Yes, in fact, in my book, one of those nice ladies, because he's tracking Mangrol and Gorgoth, and one of those nice ladies that gave Gorgoth a pie, he kills her. Because he has a compunction to kill. Now, he's a short guy. I mean, he's tiny Ernie. Matter of fact, he's probably a little shorter than an Ernie. Just to give you an idea. And he's also completely insane. Gorgoth hates him. But because he is such a problem as an assassin, the Assassin's Guild usually just uses him as a messenger. So in the book, he shows up with a message for Mangrol, which is basically a contract. And at that point, the undead apocalypse is on, and so they keep him around. But once again, he's a ticking time bomb of murder. Now, Gorgoth wants to murder him at about every moment, but Mangrol won't let him. Now, why? Now, one thing, being a little guy, he likes to kill by poison and darts. And what Mangrol has done during the book is he has slipped out one of his poison darts. And Mangrol is guarding this princess from the Trade Kingdom. Amber. And Mangrol's plan, once again, she's a princess. She marries a prince. Well, think about it. How do princes and princesses become kings and queens? Somebody has to die. So that's Mangrol's plan in the second book. Mangrol hates being cold. This is a tropical kingdom with extreme wealth. All he has to do is get inside the mind of little Prince's head, and he can rule from behind the throne. All he has to do is kill a king and implicate Maliki with that poison dart. And that is the basis for the villainous plot for book 2. You know, Mangrol tries to take over. Oh, take care, Christina. So, you know, that's why I bait and switch. Because in reality, during the second book, the vampire prince, well, let's just say he's not on board with killing all the humans. Just put it that way. Now, also with Maliki, he is Maliki the Thrice Cursed. You see, once again, he was such a murderous little prick, he was thrice cursed by a witch. And the curses are very interesting. Now, once again, another American thing is a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. That is a unique American thing. So I had to time transpose a character. And it is a female from our time several years ago named Mary Kate. A nice Catholic girl from Cincinnati. I'm using my hometown because once again, it will give me easy landmarks. And I can create landmarks that someone can actually look up. Now, I've done this in an interesting way. They transpose in time to where, how did I put it? Yes, when the moon is waxing, Mary Kate is transported back to my prehistory time. Now, once again, that takes my psychopath and it puts him up to our time. Now, of course, he is so crazy, it's just Tuesday to him. You know, he thinks our world is just another one of his delusions. In fact, he will go around the medieval world singing TV jingles. And everyone telling them to shut the hell up. Now, another thing that I've done besides just their bodies, I rearranged their genitals. You know, Maliki got Mary Kate's girl parts. And Mary Kate got Maliki's man parts. It's kind of a joke. You know the old joke, they're attached at the hip? Well, I've made these two attached at the crotch. Now, once again, they never see each other because one goes through time one way and one goes through the other. You see, Mary Kate was cursed in our time by a witch. Now, the magic likes to conserve itself. So you had, in prehistory, this witch cast a curse, and in modern times, this witch cast a curse. So the two of them got together, much like chocolate and peanut butter, and created this strange magical effect. And that's how I have my Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. When the moon is waxing, we've got the girl in the medieval realm. When the moon is waxing, she's back in the past. When it's waning, she's in her current time. And of course, she has like an evil aunt witch, you know, as her aggressor. Now, once again, every half month, she goes back and forth in time. Well, one of the effects in the book is you can see what happens in the book changes time. So when she comes, so it starts out with Maliki in the book, and eventually she appears. And then a couple weeks later, she goes back to the future. And then a couple weeks later, she'll be back to the medieval realm again. Well, when she comes back to the medieval realm again, she says that her world is overrun by undead. So, that's another interesting thing, is I use the Star Trek-like time paradoxes to where every time she comes back, you will see changes in the timeline. And of course, at the end of the book, they're going to think that everything is hunky-dory. And then Mary-Kate is going to jump into the future, and where Mary-Kate found a world that was just overrun with undead, she will find a cohesive undead empire ruled by Maliki, that humans are nothing more than bred cattle to be killed to create undead. So that is going to be a twist in the epilogue on the second book. And of course, every time she goes back and forth, there's going to be changes in the timeline depending on the character's actions. And there's a bunch of characters you guys didn't even get to know about. I'm just talking about relevant things. And, well actually, we've been on an hour and 11 minutes. I thought it had been a little longer than that. Just a minute. I've been talking so much, I have to take a few drinks and take a moment. My apologies. It's the human need thing. Good night, Rachel. So, this is the dynamic of my book. Now, once again, during my book, Gothvira gets a chance to start following in her grandmother's steps. Now, once again, I am not going to talk about that because really that's an important part of the book. Once again, since Gothvira is the main character, I'm just basically giving you some action scenes. Now, another interesting thing is Gorgoth can almost never go into a bar and not end up in a bar fight. So early in my book, he gets into a big bar fight. Now, this is another interesting thing, is many times Mangrol is the sense of reason, which is interesting because, I have my narcissistic psychopath sometimes is the voice of reason because the humans have lost the plot. Ronnie, is that you? Because that does not sound like you. It sounds like someone that went blocked. Just saying. Now, as I'm trying to think of anything relevant that might be interesting, but this is my basic guideline. As I said, I was creating my own American-like Tolkien tale. And this is basically it. Now, in the third volume, that's when the final confrontation is going to happen with the evil lich Maliki. And I've not completely wrote it out yet. I've decided not to because, once again, I'm not telling you that, well, I guess I can tell you this, but there has to be a father and son reunion. So, I'm going to probably in the second book, you will see Mangrol disappear at some point, and he won't show up again until the third book. And he's going to be in a mood. This is spring water. Well, because of Carlos, in his sock accounts, I'm not playing around with counts. I'm not. Because I'm not putting up with it no more. I'm here to talk about, a fantasy stuff, and you'll find on this channel, I will mostly keep to it. You know, this isn't Gossip Channel. Well, I'm glad it's you, Ronnie. But, you know, these are my core parts of these characters. Now, there's some other important ones, like Drakus and One Ear. One Ear's a half-orc. And he's also in league with the other side. Just saying. Now, once again, Mangrol and Gorgoth around trying to get all of their friends. Now, one of their associates was the king of the orcs. And he is a character in this. And let's just say he loses his entire kingdom. And he gets betrayed by his brother. You know, we have to have a brotherly betrayal at some point. Well, actually, after I'm done with the final versions, I will do an audiobook version on YouTube. Once I'm done with the final versions. And get some dental work. Just saying. Now, anybody have any questions? I know it's getting kind of late and it is a weekday. But I just kind of wanted to come in for an introductory talk and kind of give someone an overview on the kind of things that you're going to see a lot of here. Now, I'm going to start on the Mangrol and Gorgoth story soon. And on my playlists, every character in every story will have its own playlist, so you can just go to the playlist and watch. Now, I had a little content that I did hide on this channel. It only got a handful of views, but it was a science fiction story, and I've decided to scrap that. Actually, yes, I mean, I don't want to accidentally hit you, but... Well, I accidentally knocked something else off. All right. I just have to do the final draft. All right. Initial revisions done. And like I say, all I got to do now, I've got the rough draft sitting right over here. I just have to make my final changes and do the final draft. So yes, I do. And currently I'm reworking the death of Mandred Moore. I guess I kind of gave that one away, didn't I? But, you know, when there's certain parts of the book that, you know, as a writer, you know, that you're writing, and right now I'm reworking the death of Mandred Moore. And don't tell Mandred, I mean, he's going to be really upset. But you see, One Ear at one point starts to use him as an agent. And then the group found out about it. Just saying. And it eventually leads to Mandred's death. Now, an interesting thing, no one in the group kills Mandred Moore. Just saying. You know, this is one of those twist things to where everyone's going to assume that it's going to be a group member that kills him. But no, it's basically going to be a monster. Now, there's going to be an interesting twist, but I'm not going to say it. It's funny, but yes, I don't think I'm going to, because there's certain cherry parts of the book that I'm not going to talk about. You know, those extra moments that are going to make the liquid come out of your nose. I'm not talking about those moments. And once again, I'm stepping in territory where I would be. Well, actually, Lorgar is a long story. He's from Warhammer 40K. Now, I do want to do, yes, I do write it all by hand. Now, Lorgar was a Primarch, a son of the Emperor. Now, the Emperor made 20 Primarchs, his genetic sons. Now, unfortunately, to gain this ability to make these supermen, he made a deal with the Chaos Gods. And the Chaos Gods scattered them across the universe, being a dick, because the Emperor didn't live up to his part of the deal. Now, Lorgar fell to a planet called Colchis. Now, it was a desert planet, very what we would consider Middle Eastern-like, and very religious. But unfortunately, their religion was a part of the Chaos Gods in another guise. Well, eventually the Emperor in his crusade, conquering the universe, did find Lorgar, and gave him his own legion. And they were originally called the Imperial Heralds. And he changed it to the Word Bearers. And he started worshiping the Emperor as God. Well, the Emperor did not want to be worshipped as God, and he kept telling him to stop worshiping me, Lorgar! Yes, my God, I will stop worshiping you. You know, this is the kind of effect that went on for a long time with Lorgar. Well, eventually, the Emperor, because he doesn't want the Chaos Gods to gain power by worship, he has banned all worship. Now, the Emperor, in his non-divine wisdom, didn't tell everyone about the Chaos Gods. He kind of left that out to everyone. And the Chaos Gods were not happy. Now, once again, he tells Lorgar, stop worshiping me! And Lorgar doesn't. So eventually, Lorgar creates his perfect city. And the Emperor shows up with the Ultramarines, and they burn the damn thing to the ground. And then Lorgar's entire legion is pulled out, forced to bow, and get a stern talking to by the Emperor himself. And that created hate between the Primarch Rabute Gilliman of the Ultramarines and Lorgar of the Word Bearers. And at that point, Lorgar lost his faith. Well, on his planet was a man named Erebus. Now, Erebus has his own story. Erebus was an evil bastard. And in fact, he wasn't even Erebus. His parents would always tell him, why can't you be more like Erebus? So eventually one day, he decided to kill Erebus and become him. And Erebus had face tattoos. So he killed Erebus, and he marked his face with the same complex tattoos that Erebus had. And he became Erebus. And no one knows what his name is. Now, Erebus knew Lorgar's adopted father, the man that found him. And when Lorgar was taken to the stars with the Emperor, both of them were taken and made into Space Marines too. Now, both of them were still worshiping the Chaos Gods, or their version of it. And when Lorgar was disenchanted after what the Emperor had done, they realigned his perceptions, and they set Lorgar on their path to the Chaos Gods. And Lorgar instigated what was called the Horus Heresy, that literally killed half of humanity and plunged the stars into a massive war. And 10,000 years later, Horus, another of this emperor's children, the one that led the heresy, that was basically corrupted through Lorgar and Erebus' actions. Now, half of the emperor's sons turned against him and joined Lorgar and his crusade. And once again, Lorgar was not the leader, it was Horus. And eventually, it ended with a giant battle on Earth, and the Emperor teleporting to Horus's flagship, and they did a one-on-one fight. And Horus ended up dying eventually, and the Emperor was so grievously injured, he became a living corpse, and they interred him into the Golden Throne to keep him alive, because his psychic will was the thing that navigated through the stars. So for 10,000 years, the Emperor has sat on the Golden Throne in unbelievable agony. And 1,000 souls have to die every day to keep the Emperor alive. Now Lorgar ran to the Eye of Terror, and he became a demon prince. Now during the heresy, there was many times that him and Rabute Gilliman faced off. So in reality, Lorgar is your basic villain character in Warhammer 40K. And that basically gives you the sum up of who Lorgar is. In one of the wildcats outside, I named Lorgar. And another one of them I named Fulgrim. You know, Richella's brother is named Fulgrim. And that's another of the Primarchs. And he was the Primarch of the Emperor's Children. And he was known as being a pretty boy. And Fulgrim the cat is a pretty boy. Now, we also have Magnus. And Magnus is also one of Emperor's children. Not Emperor's children, but he had his own legion called the Thousand Sons. Now, Magnus would be considered the bookworm, and he was highly psychic. And his father forbade him on using his psychic ability. And when Horus rebelled, he felt he had to warn his father, and he ruined everything on Earth. Because his father was creating a project to where man could travel throughout the stars without the influence of the Chaos Gods. And that's why he had forbade Magnus to use his psychic powers. Now, once again, the Emperor didn't tell Magnus why. You were just supposed to obey the Emperor, and he didn't. And that's why many times throughout fantasy, you will hear hashtag Magnus did nothing wrong. Now and then in fantasy, you will see the hashtag also of Lorgar did nothing wrong. Because once again, where we go back and debate the Emperor, you know, the Emperor might have wanted to told these guys about chaos, but he didn't. But yes, Lorgar was one of the Primarchs. He was one of the perfect men. Now, a Primarch is about 9 foot tall. I mean, we are just like little tiny creatures next to them. And they have what we would consider Marvel-like superpowers. You know, Leman Russ of the Space Wolves, you know, he had yellow eyes and big fangs. Now, Sanguinius of the Blood Ravens, he had wings. He looked like an angel. And everyone loved Sanguinius. And Horus killed Sanguinius. And many times there's an artwork of the Emperor holding Sanguinius' body facing Horus. Sometimes you will see that in memes. Well, the only horrible spelling in Warhammer 40K to me is Rabute Gilliman. You know, it should be like Robert Gilliman, but it's Rabute. And man, I mean, I don't even know if I could spell it on my best day. I mean, it's the one that I keep failing at. But I will be talking some Warhammer 40K stuff, maybe on this channel, maybe on another, because I do have a different science fiction channel. Now you can kind of see I put a fantasy picture background. See, these go on my wall that you normally don't see. But I thought, you know, for this I'd, you know, bring them here as a background piece. So, you know, I'm going to put, I've got all sorts of D&D type pictures like that on the wall. It's just, I thought this time I would start with the ones that would show terrain. A pretty view. Well, that's good to know, Pindar. Now I'm going to get off here in a minute because, to be honest, I'm getting a little bit sleepy. From where I drank a ton of this. There's 450 calories in a container of this. I mean, I drank 2 of these earlier and I just wanted to pass out. It was like I had a Thanksgiving dinner. And like right now, my tummy is so tiny. I had a handful of potato chips, a couple of these, and I am absolutely stuffed in that little bit of water I've drank. Now, I'm going to get off of here. Now, I am going to have regular lives on this channel, but I kind of need to keep it on a schedule, and to be honest, I don't know. I mean, seriously, but I do want to find a time and do here every week. kind of what we've done now. It's just, sometimes I will be telling stories live, rather than, because once again, I'm being a bard here. The experience on this channel is supposed to be just like you have your own personal bard, to where I come on here and tell you stories. Now, once again, the lives are going to be interactive adventures, and we're going to play some champions, and eventually later on, once we have regular players, then we'll start maybe fooling with a D&D. So that's kind of the general plan, and thank you everyone for coming, and you're going to see me a fair amount here, but I do want to pick one time a week and give you a guaranteed something here, but I'll just figure out how that is later. Maybe we'll talk about that next time. Well, yeah, Pendar, that's kind of what I thought too, because of content like this, that a set time would be a best time, though right now I couldn't promise anything and it actually be the time. So that's what we will do on my next one, is we will set a time, but it's going to be the weekend. I'm thinking Sunday. Offhand, I'm thinking Sunday night. But I'm not going to commit to that until I talk to everyone here that are going to be regulars. Now, good night, everyone, and thank you for coming to something different other than talking about stupid people that do stupid things and who are real.